Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor, which I saw at the Staatsoper Unter den Linden. The conductor was Thomas Guggeis, the production was done by David Busch, the sets were done by Patrick Banwart, the costumes were done by Falco Herold, the lights were handled by Michael Bauer, the chorus master was Martin Wright, and the dramaturgy was handled by Detlef Giese. In my life as an opera fan and as a Shakespeare fan, there are two operas that feature the fat knight who is so well known for skirt chasing and for being a jolly rogue in the form of Sir John Falstaff. And those are, of course, Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor, known in English as The Merry Wives of Windsor, and Giuseppe Verdi's Falstaff. Now, even though Falstaff is the more well-known operatic adaptation of The Merry Wives of Windsor and has also found itself to be performed all around the world, Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor does have a pretty stable following. My experience with this opera has mainly been limited to two arias, Frau Flut's showpiece aria Nun eilt herbei, which is also a very popular concert staple for many lyric coloratura or a lyric soprano, and even Sir John Falstaff's big number, which is a drinking song, Als Büblein Klein, which has also been very popular for many a basso profondo. Interestingly enough, Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor by Otto Nicolai was written 33 years before Verdi's Falstaff. The basic plot of this opera goes like this. Sir John Falstaff has been flirting with two women in the forms of Frau Flut and Frau Reich. The two women devise a plan to trick Falstaff and plan their revenge on him. Meanwhile, Anna Reich, the daughter of Frau Reich and Herr Reich, has been pursued by three suitors. Sperlich, hailing all the way from the Netherlands, Dr. Caju, who is a Frenchman, and of course, her one true love, Fenton. Her mother wants her to end up with Dr. Caju, while her father wants her to end up with Sperlich, and she does not want either of them because she feels that her heart belongs to Fenton. As for Frau Flut and Frau Reich, they're still working on their plans to get even with Falstaff. Interspersing with this plot is Herr Flut constantly fuming of an affair that is going on with his wife and a certain John Falstaff. Everything comes into play with the ruse in which the servants are dressed as fairies, Frau Flut and Frau Reich are dressed as does, and Falstaff has deer antlers. Everything comes into play, especially when the fairies cast something on Falstaff, but in the end, it is revealed that it was just a ruse to get even with him, and nevertheless, the opera ends happily ever after. Now, the main difference between Otto Nicolai's opera and Verdi's opera is the absence of Mistress Quickly, who was also in the original Shakespearean work, The Merry Wives of Windsor. And of course, since this opera is written in German, Anne Page becomes Anna Reich, and so do her parents. Mr. and Mrs. Page become Herr and Frau Reich. The same thing can be said about the Fords, known in this opera as the Fluts. That means that Alice Ford is Frau Flut and her husband is Herr Flut. The only ones who keep their English names are, of course, Sir John Falstaff and Fenton, which makes things all the more interesting because in comparison with this opera, I kind of grew up more with the Verdi version. But nevertheless, as I managed to hear Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor, both in some excerpts that I heard on YouTube via Gottlob Frick in his drinking song Als Büblein Klein, I was completely immersed and enthralled with what this opera had to offer. Now that it's out of the way, let's get on to what I thought about the production. What I noticed about Herr Busch's production was that the action was transported from the 16th century Windsor, England, to, let's just chalk it up as the suburbs of Birmingham, England, between the late 80s to mid 90s. And coming from someone who has grown up with the likes of Heathers, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Daria, Beavis and Butthead, Clarissa Explains It All, Cheers, and many other 90s shows of my childhood, this definitely has that sense of what it's like growing up in the 90s. A suburban neighborhood where telephones are being used to contact each other. And of course, the clothes, especially when evidenced with Mrs. Flute, who is for some reason pregnant, and her neighbor, Mrs. Reich. What I also noticed about this production was that the Bayerisch dialect was being used in the dialogues, especially considering that some of the singers who embodied their respective characters come from parts of Bavaria. For example, Michaela Schuster, who sang the role of Mrs. Reich, is originally from Fürth. The same thing can be said of the likes of Mandy Friedrich and Michael Volle. And that's definitely something that was totally fun to listen to, especially coming from a non-German speaker. And speaking of other languages, Anna Reich even quotes Juliet's lines from Romeo and Juliet, thus suggesting that she is an Anglophile and someone who is just totally into British culture, and her suitors, Fenton, while he's more of a bad boy, though completely in love with her, and Dr. Caju, who is very much French and looks absolutely orderly in terms of his getup, and Sperlich, who comes all the way from the Netherlands and is kind of the nerd. And this is what I noticed about the younger characters. Anna Reich has an air of Winona Ryder's Veronica Sawyer from Heathers and Christina Ricci's character from Pecker, and even that of Jane Lane from Daria. Whereas with Fenton, if you combine Bender from The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and voila, you have this version of Fenton. With Sperlich, he kind of reminds me of a couple of Anthony Michael Hall's character from both The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. And as for Dr. Caju, he kind of reminds me of Christopher Ryan's character from The Young Ones. So these are indubitably characters who embody the archetypes. Anna Reich in this production is the rebellious young teenager who wants to be able to feel free and doesn't like to be too much of a girly girl, and she has her own unorthodox way of being feminine and strong and just doesn't like to follow conventional rules for a girl her age. And just by looking at her, she's kind of a combination of Winona Ryder and Christina Ricci, because of not only the fashion that she has, but also that type of personality that is quite magnetic. Fenton is essentially the rebellious bad boy who is also in love with her and also understands that Anna Reich is someone who is so sick and tired of following the conventional rules her parents have given her from childhood. Sperlich is the nerdy guy who is very much head over heels in love with her, but ends up kind of getting the boot because it seems that Anna Reich isn't really too much into the nerdy guys, and Dr. Caju is the proper gentleman figure who tries his very damnedest to prove just how much of a gentleman he is towards her. And as for Frau Reich and Frau Flute, they kind of remind me of Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis from Thelma and Louise. It could be the chemistry they both have, and of course the fact that one is a redhead and the other is a blonde. So it is really interesting seeing that type of dynamic. And of course, Sir John Falstaff has an air of John Candy from Uncle Buck and John Goodman's character from Roseanne, being this big burly guy who loves to drink and make merriment. Oh, and he even sang an excerpt of Heine Grönemeyer's Männer, which I thought was really fun. And of course, Herr Flut has this type of air of being a combination of Harvey Keitel, Clint Eastwood, and Christopher McDonald's Daryl from Thelma and Louise, being this frustrated husband who suspects that something is going wrong with his wife. And as for Herai, he's more of the standard 90s dad who loves his grill, who loves his house, and who just loves to prove that he is the boss around the house. And what's also really fun was that instead of Sperlich and Caju just being totally rejected, they instead end up being together in the end in a gay relationship, which I also thought was kind of unorthodox, but with an open mind, I pretty much enjoyed it. And the costumes just screamed 90s. The clothes, the way the characters did their hair, and even some of the references. Everything about this production screamed either late 80s or early to mid 90s. So overall, this production of Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber was absolutely fun, with some very interesting concepts and occasional pop culture references, and the feeling that I get with this production being transported from the 16th century Windsor, England, to, let's just say, a suburban neighborhood in either Birmingham, Liverpool, Los Angeles, or even somewhere else in the world between the 80s and the 90s. This was definitely a lot of fun that I had, and everything about it worked rather well and in a very interesting fashion. And now we get to the singers, starting off with René Pape as Sir John Falstaff. Now with this version of Falstaff, you truly need a basso profondo. Any basso who could sing the likes of Osmin, the Commendatore, Sarastro, Procida, Fiesco, the Grand Inquisitor, Fafner, Titurel, Landgraf Hermann, Veit Pogner, Dalland, Pimen, Dosife, Conte Walter, Hagen, Hunding, and many other great roles for a true basso profondo. The ones that come into my mind who have specialized as this roguish knight are Gottlob Frick and Kurt Böhme, because of their dark and wide-ranging voices which could reach such awesome depths. So essentially, you are combining the lovable oafishness of Osmin with the strong low notes of Sarastro and Marcel from Les Huguenots, as well as the absolute power that you need as the Commendatore from Don Giovanni. Now with René Pape, I definitely fell in love with him in this role. He sold it as John Falstaff, both vocally and theatrically. What he was able to accomplish as Sir John Falstaff reached pure excellence. His timbre was focused and clean as it's always been. His stage presence was strong and sturdy and charismatic as ever, and I definitely love the makeup work they have done with him in that fat suit. It totally looked so believable that Herr Pape was not only embodying Falstaff, but he was Falstaff. Yes, I cannot deny the fact that Gottlob Frick and his cavernous and deep-sounding voice, which is also a very good reason why he was known as the blackest bass in Germany, was the ideal voice for me in terms of this lovably roguish and absolutely hilarious and fun knight. And yes, we could have even had the likes of Morris Robinson embodying this part, because he is a true basso profondo. However, if I were to take that nitpick out of the way, I still have to go out of my way and say that René Pape sold it as Sir John Falstaff. What more can you expect from this gentleman? He sold it in everything he got, and I hope that he continues to stay as strong as a performer as ever and keep on being as formidable as he's always been. Willem Schwinghammer was an absolutely wonderful Herr Reich. Now, as opposed to John Falstaff's basso profondo booming power, Herr Reich calls for a basso cantante, someone who could specialize in roles like Don Giovanni, Zaccaria, Banco, Vodemo from I Vespri Siciliani, Pistola from Falstaff, Angelotti from Tosca, Publio from La Clemenza di Tito, Hunding from the Walküre, Hans Volz from the Meistersinger von Nürnberg, and many other fine roles for a basso cantante. He has to have a smooth-sounding voice to perfectly contrast with that of Sir John Falstaff's deeper, more cavernous, and more earthy tones. So you gotta have that type of contrasting to make sure that they don't sound too alike. And with Willem Schwinghammer, he did not disappoint whatsoever. He was able to make a great use of his finely tuned and absolutely wonderful basso cantante voice to bring the role of Herr Reich to life. He brought in so much swagger and so much virility to this role that I was practically eating out of the palms of his hands. That's how much he was able to inject this role with so much virility, so much charm, and everything about him that made him addicting to watch. Michael Volle was in full swing and full power as Herr Flute. Herr Flute definitely calls for a lyric or dramatic baritone. Lyric because he needs the fine tunes of a Guglielmo from Così fan tutte, Marullo from Rigoletto, and all of his elegance and focus, and of course Chaunard's musicianship from La Bohème, and dramatic because he also needs that extra meat found in roles like Conte di Luna from Trovatore, Iago from Otello, Ford from Falstaff, Gunther from Götterdämmerung, Konrad Nachtigall from Die Meistersinger von Nürnberg, Don Alvaro from Il Viaggio a Reims, Rimbaud from Le Comte d'Ory, and some really fine agile singing as evidence from characters such as Figaro from Il Barbiere di Siviglia and Dandini from La Cenerentola. Combining all these factors together, you would definitely need to fill up those shoes in order to embody this character. And I thought that Michael Volle sold it so exceptionally with virility, a sense of toughness, strength, and a lot of endurance, both vocally and theatrically. That was just how much of a dedicated performer Herr Volle has always been, and he did not disappoint. In fact, he exceeded my expectations and won me over as one of my most favorite singing actors of all time, embodying this character with so much energy, so much passion, and I salute him for everything he had to offer. David Oestreich was an absolutely fine and dashing Dr. Caju. Dr. Caju isn't really as huge or even that of a leading man material, as many singers who sing Dr. Caju would also go out of their way to sing the likes of Il Marchese d'Aubigny from La Traviata, Rochefort from Anna Bolena, and many other supporting bass roles. Nonetheless, you still need to be in fine voice to portray this character, and I thought that David Oestreich did just that. Sure, he could use a lot more development in terms of his lower registers. That means put in a lot more chest, put in a lot more core, and all of a sudden, it'll be a voice that could reach great depths. So I really do hope that he continues to strengthen his lower register, because there were times that it didn't really sound as full or rich as I would love it to be. So once he keeps strengthening the lower registers, once he keeps strengthening that chest voice and those chest tones, we got a fine bass baritone we'll definitely look out for. Pavel Breslik brings in grace and charisma to the role of Fenton. Much like his Verdi counterpart, he does need a light lyric tenor who can sing gracefully with fine musicianship and, of course, great focus on all the registers. That means he's got to have that swagger and that charm of a Duca di Mantua from Rigoletto, Edgardo Ravenswood from Lucia di Lammermoor, Arturo Talbo from I Puritani, Tebaldo from I Capuletti e Montecchi, Cavaliere Belfiore from Il Viaggio a Reims, and even that of Tamino from the Zauberflöte, and combine that with clear and absolutely gorgeous singing found in Almaviva from Il Barbiere di Siviglia, Tonio from La Fidora Gimot, Memorino from L'Elisir d'Amore, Ernesto from Don Pasquale, Elvino from La Sonambula, Alfredo Germont from La Traviata, and even that of Ferrando from Così fan tutte. Any tenor who does Fenton should be able to not only sing gracefully and sing so uniformly throughout all the registers, and even have great coordination in each of them with all the agility and all of the fine musicianship that is necessary, but he also has to act the role very well. And I thought that Pavel Breslik did a pretty good job embodying Fenton. And yes, he was also quite well known in singing the other Fenton from Verdi's Falstaff, but I'm going to focus on his performance as Fenton in the Nicolai opera. Sure, his voice could use a little bit more depth and strength. That means developing his chest tones a lot more, avoid mask singing, and really sing from the pharynx so that his voice can grow in strength, can grow in richness, and can bloom a lot more than it already has. This is someone who does capture me with his charisma, charm, and overall dedication to his craft. I can never go wrong with him in terms of how he throws himself into each and every role he does, and for that, he deserves a whole lot of kudos for everything he accomplished as a fine singing actor. And I seriously hope that he could be able to keep developing his voice a lot more and in the right way. Who knows? A couple of tenors I would highly suggest for Mr. Breslik to listen to more often would be the likes of Richard Taube, Peter Anders, Walter Ludwig, and even that of Ferruccio Tagliavini and Tito Schippa, because those were fine, light lyric tenors with great coordination throughout all the registers. Oh, and lest I forget about Jerry Hadley, who was a complete lyric tenor with great control of his voice and an excellent command of everything he had to sing. And I'm sure that once he learns from all of these tenors, and once he puts that into practice, we got a voice that could really prove itself to be a lot better and in much greater condition. Linard Frelink was an absolutely dashing and charming Sperlich. Don't be fooled by not only the size of this role, but also thinking that it's just mainly a character tenor role, because it is certainly far from that. This role truly requires a light lyric tenor who can sing gorgeously and with great musicianship. Any light lyric tenor who has sung the likes of Pedrillo from Die Entführung aus dem Serail, Almaviva from Il Barbiere di Siviglia, Beppe from Donizetti's Rita, Fenton from Verdi's Falstaff, Rinuccio from Puccini's Gianni Schicchi, and even one of the lovers from Puccini's Il Tabarro would even go out of their way to sing this character part. And why not? It's a lot of fun to sing because he has that one aria in which he calls out that his sweet Anna is his and his for good. And I thought that with Leonard Freelink, his voice really shone so well. I was really astounded by the quality of his voice in terms of how much he was able to let it carry out all throughout the theater. It is a pleasant sounding voice, but at the same time, it has some type of body to it. And of course, a great timbre I can certainly root for. I seriously hope that Leonard Freelink will continue to strengthen his voice and continue to be as fine and dashing as a performer, because this is a fine light lyric tenor with a great international career that I am hoping to see him go from strength to strength. And I do not want to see him giving into bad habits, nor do I want to see him giving into complacency. The one person I was extremely excited to see as Frau Flute was indubitably the very fine German dramatic coloratura soprano Mandy Friedrich. Now this role, Frau Flute, has been attracting a lot of lyric coloratura sopranos and dramatic coloratura sopranos alike. Much like her counterparts in the Italian, French, and Mozart repertoire, those being Lucia Ashton from Lucia della Mermur, Violetta Valéry from La Traviata, Gilda from Rigoletto, Medora from Verdi's Il Corsaro, Alzira from Verdi's Alzira, Marguerite de Valois from Les Huguenots, and Berthe from Le Prophète. Frau Flute needs a singer who has to combine great coloratura singing with a lot of fine lyricism found in roles like Pamina from Zauberflöte and Melisande from Péléas and Melisande, and do so in a way with great technique. Oh, unless I forget about Antonia from Le Conte of Man in terms of her virtuoso singing, and Corinna from Il Viaggio a Reims. She needs to combine all of those factors in order to really climb the ladder and make Frau Flute an absolutely wonderful character combined with excellent bel canto technique. And yes, speaking of bel canto, you would also need a singer who can also sing the likes of Amina from La Sonnambula, Elvira from I Puritani, and Giulietta from I Capuletti e Montecchi. And I thought that Mandy Friedrich sold it so exceptionally. I bought her as Frau Flute. She gave everything that she got in this role and more. That was just how much I was completely enthralled to see her strut her stuff in this role. I've been following her career ever since I was a teenager. She was very well known for singing the Queen of the Night from Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, and combining with that role, she sang the likes of Constanze from Die Entführung aus dem Serail, Donna Anna from Mozart's Don Giovanni, and even the Countess Almaviva from The Marriage of Figaro. These days, she is now heading towards a more lyric soprano repertoire with engagements such as Agathe from Der Freischütz, and even jumping in for Irina Lungu as Marguerite from Gounod's Faust, a role that she's also sung in a lot of European opera houses. Mandy Friedrich has always fascinated me as a singer. I first heard her when I was 20 as the Queen of the Night live from the Salzburger Festspielhaus, and boy did she sell it in that role. And I have been wanting to see her live for quite some time, because this was a soprano I have been praising so much because of her flawless technique and everything about her that made her shine like the brightest star. And she certainly accomplished what she was able to do as Frau Flute with everything she got and more. She had me eating out of the palms of her hands, and she was excellent in that role. And I also hope that she will be able to tackle more French and Italian roles, such as Amalia from I Masnadieri, Giovanna d'Arco, Giselda from I Lombardi, Medora from Il Corsaro, Marguerite de Valois from Les Huguenots, Berthe from Le Prophète, Isabelle from Robert le Diable, Elvira from I Puritani, Amina from La Sonnambula, Giulietta from I Capuletti e Montecchi, Madame Cortese and Corinna from Il Viaggio a Reims, Mathilde from Guillaume Tell, Violetta from La Traviata, and many other iconic roles for both a lyric coloratura and dramatic coloratura soprano. She has the makings of a great career that has been going from strength to strength, and I cannot wait to see what the future has to offer for someone as beautiful, graceful, and phenomenal as Frau Mandy Friedrich. So kudos to Miss Friedrich for bringing in such an excellent performance as Frau Flute. Equally as excellent was Michaela Schuster as Frau Reich. As opposed to Frau Flute's fine coloratura singing, Frau Reich needs a chesty and well-focused and steely dramatic mezzo. Someone who could be able to combine that florid lyrical singing found in roles like Isolée from Le Comptoir, Agnese del Maino from Beatrice di Tenda, and even that of Giovanna from Rigoletto, and those seductive, sinuous tones found in Giulietta from Le Comte of Man, Didon from Le Troyon, Carmen from Carmen, Dalila from Samson et Dalila, Amneris from Aida, Eboli from Don Carlo, Cunizza from Oberto, and even Fenenna and Preziosilla from Nabucco and La Forza del Destino respectively, to some fine chesty singing found in Suzuki from Madama Butterfly, Azucena from Il Trovatore, Branghene from Tristan und Isolde, the second Norn from Götterdämmerung, and even that of Massenet's Herodiade. Combining all of these factors would be able to bring in so much dimension and so much character to any mezzo singing the role of Frau Reich. And what more can you expect from someone as awesome, charismatic, strong, and formidable as Michaela Schuster as Frau Reich? After hearing her voice live, I am totally convinced that this was a singer who was very disciplined in everything she had to offer, and even a singer who gave it her all in everything that she did. She was able to throw herself in so effectively to this character that I was amazed. She was able to dig into those chest tones so effectively, and she was able to use that focused, burnished, smoky, and absolutely gorgeous mezzo-soprano voice of hers to make this character come alive. This is also a mezzo whose career I have been following ever since I was a teenager. From singing the Zwischenfach roles of Sieglinde from Die Walküre, Marie from Wozzeck, Giulietta from Le Comte of Man, Cassandre from Le Troyon, and even that of Eboli and Amneris from Don Carlo and Aida respectively, to singing all of these great dramatic mezzo and contralto parts, such as Fricka from the Ring Tetralogy, Branghene from Tristan und Isolde, Madame de Coissy from Le Dialogue de Carmelite, and even her recent explorations with Zita from Gianni Schicchi, La Zia Principessa from Suor Angelica, and even Clytemnestra from Electra. This woman can definitely do it all, and she had the charismatically commanding stage presence and her great gifts as a singing actress to prove it. She was someone who stood her ground so effectively that I was in cloud 9 when I saw Michaela Schuster embody the role of Frau Reich. And she practically stole the show from everyone's feet because of her great comic timing and, of course, her equally formidable voice and fine stage presence. Anna Prohaska was a charming, kittenish, and purely awesome Anna Reich. Now, don't just pass off this role as basically a soubrette-ish role. This role also requires just as much agility as Frau Flute. You need the virtuosic skills found in roles such as Olympia from Le Comte of Man, the Fiaccarmilli from Arabella, Rosina in the soprano key from Barbiere di Siviglia, Rita from Donizetti's Rita, Lisa from La Sonnambula, and even Nanetta from Verdi's Falstaff, and combine that with the lyrical qualities found in roles like Lauretta from Gianni Schicchi, and even Lisette from La Rondine. Any singer who sings Anna Reich should be able to prove herself to be an agile singer, capable of singing both lyrically and with as much virtuoso skill as possible. And I thought that Anna Prohaska was, as always, an absolutely brilliant singer. She knew how to give it her all in everything she got, and she was someone who stood her ground so effectively that I was practically on cloud nine every time she was on stage. Her signature charm and her signature focus found in that light lyric soprano voice of hers made her an absolute standout. So overall, the singing was absolutely great all around. There were two major standouts among the men, and those were René Pape and Michael Folle, whose virility and absolute strength as singing actors made them stand out so effectively. And as for the women, all three of them stood out so magnificently. From Michaela Schuster's smoky, sinuous, and dominating Frau Reich to Mandy Friedrich's virtuoso, charming, elegant, and beautiful Frau Flute, and Anna Prohaska's lyrical, lovely, and gorgeous Anna Reich. These singers were in their absolute prime and tip-top shape, and they continue to show as much strength, endurance, and a lot of toughness in everything they had to offer in their respective roles. And the conducting done by Thomas Gugeis was really great all around. Everything was meticulously planned. There was no slugging along. Everything was pinpoint with such accuracy and such cleanliness that I really have to applaud him for the work he managed to do, keeping that orchestra into shape. And of course, the chorus and orchestra of the Staatsoper Unter den Linden were absolutely brilliant all the way through. So overall, with a very fun production and some great singing to be found in the likes of René Pape, Michael Folle, Michaela Schuster, Mandy Friedrich, and Anna Prohaska, as well as some really great conducting accomplished by Maestro Thomas Gugeis, this was definitely a wonderful evening for opera, and I really have to thank all the fine ladies and gentlemen of the Staatsoper Unter den Linden for putting this opera up. And I seriously hope that Otto Nicolai's Die Lustigen Weiber von Windsor will be performed not only all throughout Europe, but I also hope that the likes of the Met, the Royal Opera House, and even La Scala will pick it up. This is an opera with great music, especially coming from the likes of Sir John Falstaff in his drinking song and Frau Flute's great showpiece aria. And for those of you who caught this particular production of Otto Nicolai's Die Lustige Weiber von Windsor at the Staatsoper Unter den Linden, what'd you think of it? Did you feel like Mandy Friedrich stood out so well as Frau Flute? Did you also feel that René Pape was in excellent form as Sir John Falstaff? Did you also feel that Michaela Schuster was in great shape as Frau Reich? Or did you feel like the singing was not really to your liking? Please comment below and let me know. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in on Wednesday or even that of Thursday, where I hope to review Bizet's Carmen, starring Yulia Matokchina, who is a mezzo that I have been wanting to see live for quite some time. So until then, good night everybody.